ethical questions and perhaps begin to consider our responses now, ladies and gentlemen. There are sufficiency, normalification, and justice. From a legal standpoint, currently there are limited ethical conditions and human embryos can only be grown for 14 days, ladies and gentlemen. The 14th day is the point at which a spherical embryo starts to form a body and when cells begin taking on characteristics. With more research and acceptance of this process, how will the law adapt? I'm looking at you, Dean. How will the law adapt? Are we ready to really talk to our legislatures to get ready for dealing with this? Firstly, pregnancy laws will need to be reformed, ladies and gentlemen. We also have to consider how we approach abortions, for instance. Could this technology be used to amend abortion laws, I ask? Additionally, countries will need to rethink their surrogacy law in the future. To amend abortion laws, I ask. Additionally, countries will need to rethink their surrogacy law in the future. And legal regulatory frameworks, and it's something that we need to work on. This is a step in the right direction, I argue, ladies and gentlemen. However, our legislation also needs to respond accordingly. How do we tap into the benefits of gene editing without risking human rights? In the South African context, for instance, Powder et al. Argue that we approach germline editing based on principles derived from the Constitution. Currently, genetic editing is expected to comply with same laws and ethical requirements as all scientific research relating to human reproduction. However, the authors argue that principles such as regulation of the process, ensuring well-established standard of safety and efficacy. However, the authors argue that principles such as regulation of the process, ensuring well-established standard of safety and efficacy for a proactive approach. If we have any hope of subverting Huxley's dark premonition of the future, if you will, then we must ensure that regulating AI is not a futile exercise. As the biologist and author of Daedalus J.B.S. Halden once poignantly wrote, we can foretell little of the future save that the thing that has not been is the thing that shall be, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Let's clap one more time for him. Indeed, a very complex and evolving field. I think as I was listening, I was a bit scared where we're heading towards, but I think we can't ignore the benefits also, the ethical considerations that come with these technologies. I believe our parliamentarians here present, you will be ahead, you will be proactive in our considerations of legislation that will control this field. Thank you very much, Professor Lithuka. And I would like to acknowledge some personalities before we take our Q&A. The High Commissioner for Nigeria, Her Excellency Cecilia Eting, welcome. The Director of Public Prosecution, Madam Yvonne Atakra, Professor, thank you so much for honoring our invitation. I would also like to acknowledge Reverend Professor Emmanuel K. Labi, Chancellor and founder of Regent University College